Yo, how is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Down Podcast, where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. I am your host, Chris Maltby, and today I am joined with my co-hosts, Parth Shaw and Jaylen McClinton. How's it going, guys?
Doing good. We just recorded a video right before this, so back to back. Keep grinding some Bears videos for you guys.
They're doing good, just enjoying this Arizona weather right now. It's extremely hot, but I'm trying to get pushed through it,
And we are joined today by a very special guest. He's amassed over 83.7 thousand subscribers in about 5.5 years on YouTube. He's a comedian in New York City, I believe a former teacher, and he's also the leader of the Grossi posse and host of the Packast. Welcome to the show, Tom Grassi.
That's me. Wow, that was the nicest intro I think I've ever gotten in like 4 years, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. So with Tom today, we're going to be talking everything NFC North, everything Bears, everything Packers, also talking a little bit about his success on YouTube and what he continues to plan on doing in the future. So Tom, first and foremost, we know that the success of the Bears in 2020 hinges on the quarterback play. So I want to ask, what was your reaction to the acquisition of Nick Foles earlier this offseason, and who do you see winning the open competition between him and Mitchell Trubisky?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because the Bears are the kind of organization, and I've said this now for years, is that like their defense can make them win the NFC North just alone. Like, it doesn't matter who they put back there. However, like if they're going to go and actually go past that point, past the wild card round, they are going to need somebody who's somewhat competent behind center. So, and I say that, and I was a big like Mitch Trubisky supporter, not just because he sucked, but because like I actually believed in him a little bit and was like, okay, he's not as bad as people are saying, etc. But when they got Nick Foles, I think it's crazy because you have guys like coming out of the organization saying like Mitch Trubisky's our starting quarterback for next year. Then they go back and they get Nick Foles. And then like the whole benching thing that went on last year, it just seems like they're saying things and then doing either the complete opposite or contradicting themselves. So I don't think Nick Foles is a bad QB. However, the amount of money that they're paying for him, because they're paying out a bunch of guaranteed money that the Jaguars were going to have to pay for him, the thing is, like, Gardner Minshew, no offense to Gardner Minshew, like, beat out Nick Foles. So, like, I don't have, like, all the confidence in the world, but I think Nick Foles has definitely shown him, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, that he can at least do the bare minimum to not lose you games, which honestly just might be what you guys need. But I do not see them going with Trubisky unless Trubisky just has the most amazing camp and Nick Foles is just not showing up at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, both quarterbacks know the system like equally, I guess you could say. It'll be interesting to see if camp plays out due to the virus or anything. But I got a question for you here. One key need for the Packers this offseason was adding more weapons around Aaron Rodgers, and they shocked the whole entire world and took Jordan Love in the first round. What was your reaction to the pick?
Let's just say my initial reaction wasn't great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I thought Jordan Love was a bad player. It's actually the opposite. When I looked at his tape, he was one of the first guys I looked at, coming into the draft because Love's name was associated with the Packers and he might fall down to us, etc. And he was the kind of guy that, in 2018 was a rock star. Last year, sucked. He also didn't really have any wide receivers, but he forced a lot of balls and it really was not pretty. And it's not the fact that, we drafted him that made me upset. It was a combination of Aaron Rodgers says he wants to play into his 40s, right? And there hasn't been any inclination that he is going to go off a massive decline. Of course, anything can happen, but that hasn't happened yet. Two, the fact that you said, like, yes, the Packers need weapons, and instead we picked up Jordan Love in the first round, who isn't going to help us for a few years. This was definitely a pick for the future, and I don't necessarily disagree with it because God knows we've needed a backup for a long time, so a bare minimum, we got that. But if they were going to do that, then I just thought within the first 2 days they were going to get a wide receiver at some point, and they just never did. So that was surprising to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So, my first question is: the NFC North seems to be shifting towards the divisions of strong secondaries. The Bears have Eddie Jackson, Jaylen Johnson, and Kyle Fuller. The Packers have Jair Alexander, former Bear, and Adrian Amos, and Kevin King. The Lions have Jeff Okudah and Desmond Trufant, and the Vikings just added a first-round rookie cornerback in Jeff Gladney, alongside Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith. Which of these secondaries do you think is the scariest?
I think it's the Bears. I think it's easy. I loved the Jaylen Johnson pick for you guys. I think that he was an absolute steal at where you got him. If he can stay healthy, I know he had, 3 shoulder surgeries before this, but if he can stay healthy, that secondary is going to be stacked. And it's not just because, Eddie Jackson is so great. What scares me the most is that your front seven are so good, it makes your secondary look better. The Lions front seven, they have struggled. I thought they were going to be much better than they were. They weren't. Their secondary obviously has gotten better, but the Lions also can't get themselves together. So I'm not truly concerned about them just yet. And the Vikings, I know this has nothing to do with it, but they have Kirk Cousins. I'm not really concerned about it too. So, but yeah, the Vikings have always had a good defense. They've had a good, solid defense. But yeah, no, it's definitely the Bears defense. That's the scariest to me.
Absolutely. All these secondaries shaping up to be very good in 2020. Speaking a little bit more on the NFC North, depending on how things play out, it's looking to be as competitive as ever in 2020, and it looks like the division may be up for grabs between the Bears, Vikings, and obviously your Green Bay Packers. How do you see the division playing out this year?
I think right now it's definitely the Packers' division to lose, not just because they just swept the division last year, but I think it's because, a lot of people point to the Packers and are like, wow, their draft sucked, like super duper sucked. And even if you want to say that we don't get a single person from the draft, which I don't believe, because I think A.J. Dillon, DeGuara, Martin, they're all going to contribute early on to the team. But I think that bare minimum, the Packers didn't regress any, because they lost Brian Bulaga, which was their biggest loss. They got Ricky Wagner over there, which I'm not super confident in. But they also have now, they picked up 3 offensive linemen. I'm sure ships will be made. I'm not drastically concerned, even though we're going to have to get an offensive tackle eventually, probably next year. But I think it's the Packers that really, with Aaron Rodgers behind center, to say that he's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder, I think will be the understatement of the year. I think that if, 1 or 2 of those wide receivers step up, we will definitely be competing for the NFC North title. I think the Vikings are right there as well. And I think when it comes to the Bears, like I said about their defense before, it depends on what they do on offense, because what do you do if Trubisky and Foles struggle? Yeah. Then you kind of just throw your hands up and go, okay, well, this is bad.
Then you tank for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly. But the Jaguars are going to try to beat you to it.
Hey, our defense itself can win us 8 games like last year, I feel like. But going back to your personal life, you've gotten over 83,000 subscribers during your 6 years on YouTube. What about the Grossi posse has continued to motivate you throughout the time, and how have you stayed persistent throughout the journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love how I was just now let's talk about personal things. I was just oh, okay. So, yeah. So, I technically started the YouTube channel in 2014, but I posted one thing on it. It was just a reaction video from the 2014 NFC Championship game, and that got some hits, and I was like, okay, cool. And then people reached out and were like, hey, we want to do more things. So I started the podcast, but it wasn't on YouTube for about 2 years. And then when I started putting it on YouTube about 2.5, 3 years ago, listen, as you guys are I'm sure are aware, and any podcaster out there, when you first start out, it sucks. You work your ass off, and you could put together the greatest 20 to 50 minutes of content there is on the internet, and 3 people watch it.
Yeah.
And you're okay, this feels great. This is not just a shot to the face. But at the same time, and this is what I tell every single person that wants to create content, podcast, whatever, is 1, the market is so oversaturated. Everybody and their mother has a podcast. So anything you could do to stick out, obviously, is helpful. But it's 2, is if you enjoy doing it, then it honestly doesn't matter. I have approached this the same way when 5 people were listening, or 5,000 or 50,000 people were listening. At this point, obviously it's nice to have people listen. I'm not gonna lie. It definitely is a lot nicer than 3. But I think it's just a matter of I have always been motivated to create the content that I wanted to create and love the content that I create. And if there's any point where I don't, then I just don't create that content. I don't do the whole like catering thing because that's not who I want to be. And that's not why I got into this. I mean, I started off being essentially just like, okay, as a hobby, and it is morphed into I work 2 full-time jobs because it's the podcast. And, I left the teaching and then went back for a leave replacement, which basically just meant I was a temporary teacher. But I work about 100 hours a week on both of those things combined. And it's just, it's a grind and it's tough, but it's rewarding in both facets. So, it's kind of just that inner motivation. And obviously the fans are great and they're amazing and they help out a lot. But I think in order for you to be successful, you have to really, really enjoy what you're doing, or you're just not going to do it.
Definitely. So, sticking on your YouTube career, obviously the next milestone for you is to hit 100K subs and earn that silver YouTube play button. How will it be once you reach 100K, and what are your plans for the future in regards to your channel?
Yeah, it's funny because me personally. So like I hit 25K in September. It was like, I think just after the season began. And then it was like 50, I think, which was right after the NFC Championship game. And then, we're at where we're at now. And for me, I think 100K is just going to be very validating because like, I don't know, it's weird. Like I usually don't like to focus on like the numbers and things like that. But 100K for me is like something that I've been working towards for a long, long time. And it'll just feel like, okay, like we did it, fam. It's not a million, but it's like that'll be the next step in like 10 years. But no, I think it's really cool to take something and make it your own and work your ass off and do it. And then for me personally, like while I have guys and gals on every single week during the regular season from opposing teams, this is something that like when I started, I didn't know how to edit. Some will say I still don't. Creating thumbnails, recording, podcasting, all this equipment, filming. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And it's literally just been all self-taught. And I think it's incredibly gratifying to be like, I created something from literally nothing, and now 100,000 people support it. Like, that's a really cool thing. And I'm not one that like, sits back and reflects a lot because I'm just like, okay, just got to keep next video, what have you. But at 100K, yeah, no, I'm definitely going to sit back a little bit and reflect and be like, okay, this was cool. And it'll like, maybe I'll do that for like an hour and then I'll start doing the next video. But if for that 1 hour, it'll be really cool.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go.
So and for your second part of your question, talking about like what kind of like the future plans are, I think it's just, I try to be as connected with the fan base as humanly possible. I mean, that's why I don't put stuff behind paywalls, and I don't do that kind of stuff. If they want to like support on like Patreon or something like that, that's completely and totally their choice. I'm not going to limit the content that they can get. But if this is like the only thing that I'm doing, then I think it's just a matter of like just doing more, because we're going to get to a point, hopefully, hopefully there's football this year, but we're going to get to a point eventually where like this will be able to actually financially sustain me. And then I can literally just pour like my heart and soul into just this. And I mean, like I've been doing all of this, like I said, with 2 full-time jobs. I mean, I'm really excited to see what I can do with just one.
Absolutely. So heading back to the Bears, one of their most underrated players is Allen Robinson, who racked up 98 catches for over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2019. And many analysts, and by many analysts I mean Ryan Clark of ESPN, have come out this offseason and said that he isn't a true wide receiver one in this league. So I wanted to pick your mind on that and ask, as a fan of a rivaling team, do you think that Robinson is a wide receiver one in this league?
Is he a wide receiver one? I mean, if he's the only guy doing something on the team, sure. I mean, like that's the thing. Would I put him in like my top 10 of like current wide receivers in the league? Most likely not. If I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, did he have one season where he was like double-digit touchdowns? I think maybe.
Yeah, I believe that was 2015.
Yeah, so that was one, and I think he had like one or two over 1,000 yards. I think he's a good player. I mean, that there's no doubt about that. But I will say, I think that he has been limited by the teams he has been on. I know Packer fans kind of hate on Allen Robinson because he chose to go to Chicago instead of Green Bay, and so we've kind of just been laughing at him ever since. But I think that I think that he's good enough to be a wide receiver one. I don't think that a lack of wide receivers are the Bears' problems. And I can definitely tell you that it's not a lack of tight ends that is the problem on offense for the Bears. I think it's more of just, if you have this is the thing I had with Trubisky. If you're going to have Trubisky be your quarterback, then you need to design a system around him that is going to make him successful. That's what all great coaches do. You look at like a Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Brady's an excellent quarterback, don't get me wrong. But Belichick put him in a system where he can flourish. When Jimmy Garoppolo was in there for, a little bit, he put a system around him. When Matt Castle was in there, he put a system around him. And I just don't think that system was ever put in place for Mitch Trubisky. Trubisky has the ability to extend plays. He has the ability to make some good tight throws because I've seen him do it. It's just, but I think like the complete lack of a running game that you guys had for whatever the hell reason last year, when you have David Montgomery, who's just like, hey, I can go real fast. Let's go. Like, I can hit the ball and I can do stuff for you guys. I think it was just like such a mess of play calling and then just lack of confidence in Trubisky that added to the fact of him not being successful. And he definitely did make some crappy throws, terrible decisions, what have you. But I feel like there's just been so much pressure on him because Pace traded up for him, and that's kind of just compounded, and I just don't feel like it's helped the situation at all. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on with you guys, but I feel like you just need to dedicate yourself to a game plan and be like, okay, we have obviously a kick-ass defense. Let's be a ground and pound team, or let's be, we're going to throw for like 4 yards and just like, chip away, and then we're going to run the rest of it. Something, that you're like good at, because I feel like last year was just like, let's throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at like the Cowboys game, everything worked out perfectly, offense and defense. And we used Trubisky's running, he used his legs. He made some beautiful throws that game. I think it comes down to Matt Nagy and like the new coordinators that the Bears got. But I have a question for you about the Bears and Packers rivalry. So the Bears and Packers have been like the best rivalry in all of sports, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure you can say the same. Even though it's been one-sided recently, how exciting is it to see these two teams meet up, and what's your appreciation of the two teams as well?
Yeah, no, obviously there's the history that's behind it. And I would say even when like the Bears were like kicking our ass, like it was at least be like, wow, okay, like this is fun to watch because it's competitive. Because like during my lifetime, essentially, during like my adult life, it's kind of just been the Vikings. That's kind of been the team that has been there with the Packers and giving them the most amount of problems. And I think that, when you have the Bears in there, it just kind of like renews that sense of rivalry. And absolutely, there's a ton of appreciation for it, and I think that it is just a benefit to the league, the division, and fans, when both teams are playing at their absolute best, because then you're going to see some classic games.
Yeah, so earlier we talked about Jordan Love and how you guys traded up for him in the first round with already having a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. How do you feel about him, how do you feel about Aaron Rodgers' future with the Packers, and do you think he's going to stay on the team until he retires?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So he came out and said in the press conference that that's what he wanted, right? He wanted to play until he was 40. He wanted to retire as a Green Bay Packer. And he goes, honestly, like, that's up in the air now. And the problem is that right now we have no idea. We're basing this off of saying, okay, if Jordan Love develops and he's the next Aaron Rodgers, then no, Aaron Rodgers is most likely not going to end his time as a Green Bay Packer. He's most likely going to go to another team. He flat out said, if I can still play, then, and I disagree, if they're like forcing me out or whatever, then I'm going to leave. Personally, right now, while there's a lot of variables, we don't know what's going on with Jordan Love, I would think that unless Jordan Love just absolutely sucks and is just terrible, I do not think that Aaron Rodgers is going to finish his career with Green Bay. I'd love him to because I love Aaron Rodgers, and that will be sad because then I get to see another great quarterback go to another team. Super psyched about that. But yeah, no, I do not think he's going to finish it up, and that'll be sad. But it's one of those things that like I will root for Aaron Rodgers just like I rooted for Brett Favre, and I hate the Vikings with the passion of a burning like million suns. But I love Aaron Rodgers. I love what he did for this team. I love his story. And I think that, regardless of who he goes to, I will still root for him as a player, but calm down, guys. You're not going to get him just yet.
There are a lot of Bears fans who are so indifferent on that one. We've been posting on Instagram a little bit about it, and it's really 50-50. But, you've become not only a reputable name amongst Packer fans, but also throughout the league based on your comedy skits. So what's your history as a comedian, and how did you decide to start posting those bits on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, if you want to go like way back, I made like home movies with like my friends like growing up and stuff. But when I went to college, I joined an improv comedy group, led that group for a little bit. We did like trainings with like UCB, which is a big improv troupe in New York City. And when I got out of college, improv relies on other people. And like when you leave college, people go in different directions. So because of that, like I didn't have any improv troupe. So then I said, okay, well, you know what? Let me do stand up because why not? And I did stand up and like it was good. I enjoyed it. It kind of like scratched that comedy itch. And then really, it all started because of the 2014 NFC Championship game. It literally was just like a reaction, but it was a planned reaction. Like it wasn't real. And it was just like a way of like therapy to be like, okay, yep, we just blew that game in, 5 minutes. And it was just one of those things that like I enjoyed doing it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to post those. And then they got immensely popular. So, I started like really, really doing it, for multiple teams last year, not like last season, but the season before that. I didn't do all of them because at one point I was just like, you know what, I'm like kind of getting burnt out with it. And I don't want to just like churn them out just to churn them out. But now, like from this past season, I've done 22 out of the 32 teams.
Man.
And like, it's just a matter of like, as long as I keep having like inspiration and, want to do it, I'll continue to do it. And like people still post, they're like, oh, do the Panthers or the Jets or the Broncos or what have you. And I think it's very funny to like watch fans from all these opposing teams like come in and be like, oh my God, like that was my reaction, even though I'm a Jets fan. Because I think that like there is like that commonality of like, hey, like we go through these ups and downs like together, like being sports fans and being football fans. And I think that's just like what people like relate to and connect to, and they enjoy it, and I enjoy making them. So, I'm not gonna lie, like there's times where I will come down here and I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna like record this reaction video. And then like I record 2 minutes of it and I'm like, nope, I hate it. And I just do something completely and totally different. The vast majority of everything you see is completely made up on the spot.
So one team that the Bears and Packers have had a lot of success against throughout the last season was the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings lost some marquee pieces like Stephon Diggs, Trey Waynes, and Everson Griffin this offseason. And then they also signed Kirk Cousins to a contract extension.
Yeah, they did.
Their draft was pretty solid, though. But do you think they regress this offseason or no?
I'm sorry, I totally interrupted. Can you say that last part again?
Do you think they regress this offseason or got better?
I wouldn't say they regress. No, they lost Stephon Diggs, which is the big one. I think that Thielen will be able to kind of step in, and obviously getting Justin Jefferson in is going to help. But they're another team, I know obviously they had some injuries, going down the line, but they're another team, and they have Dalvin Cook, who is a disgustingly good running back. And then they have Kirk Cousins, who is a disgustingly mediocre quarterback. Like, it's just, he's like not bad. He's not good. Like, he's like perfectly like rightly average. And, his stat line like can be like, oh my God, like it was really good. Like his stat line last year was good. But like when he needed to perform in big games, especially on Mondays, it usually like he fell a bit short. Like when the game had to be put on his shoulders, he fell through. And I think that's like the difference between like a Jimmy Garoppolo and a Kirk Cousins, because Jimmy Garoppolo came out last year in 2 games, specifically the Rams game and then the Saints game. And he was like, listen, like, I'm going to win us this game. And he did. He won them that game. Kirk Cousins, can play really, really well. But if I'm not mistaken, like the first game of the season, I know he didn't have to, but like, I think he threw under 10 passes, and that's great, like that they can like rely on Dalvin Cook and what have you. But they're another team that, if they don't get the running game going, like they are going to get destroyed. Look at the 49ers game. Look at the Packers game, the last one, I think it was week 16. Those are the kind of games like with Kirk Cousins that I understand why they extended him, because they don't really have another option. But I don't know a single Vikings fan that is not sitting there at that point and go like, wow, we really should have kept like Case Keenum instead, because we could have paid him a lot less money and not Kirk Cousins. So I don't think they necessarily regress. I think they definitely did get better as a team, but they're another one that's going to rely on their offense.
So in 2018, you were featured on a Sunday Night Football segment. How did that opportunity present itself, and how cool was that? Because as a fan of yours, just seeing that, even though you're a Packers fan, I was very excited for you. That was a big opportunity. So definitely, how did that opportunity present itself?
Yeah, no, that was a cool thing. It was 2018. And it was, I'm trying to think of the exact day. I think it was Wednesday. It was like the day before Thanksgiving. And I had just gotten back from New York City. I had just recorded a podcast in a Vikings bar with a Vikings fan. I got home and I got an email on my phone from the secretary of an NBC exec, who said that he was just perusing YouTube and found my videos, liked what I did. Would I be interested in doing a promo for Sunday Night Football? And I was like, what? Like, I was like, okay, this is when they asked for like my social security number and, my mother's maiden name and try to steal all my information, because it's obviously a scam. And I was like, absolutely, I would love to do that. And she's like, okay, great. He's going to call you in like X amount of minutes. So he calls me, he like tells me what this idea is like for the bit. He goes, would you want to record something, or we can just come to your house and we can record? And I was like, I didn't have like nice camera equipment. I was recording off like a camcorder. It like wasn't an HD or anything like that. So I was like, no, you guys would definitely come. So the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, they came to my house. Camera crew came down into my basement. I cleaned the house really, really well before they came. And they came down to my basement and we spent a few hours shooting it. And then they left and I was like, okay. And then like Saturday went by and I was like, okay, like they didn't send me anything yet. Sunday comes and I'm like, they're going to axe it because they're like, wait a minute, this guy has like a Muppet voice. There's no way that we're going to air this. Like it came out terribly. I'm like, there's no way. And then like 3 hours before, I got a text message from the guy and he was like, do you want it now or do you want to just see it for the first time, like when it's airing? And I was like, oh no, I want to see it for the first time it was airing. And that was like one of those things that was so freaking awesome. And that, talk about validation, that was really, really cool. I also thought I was going to get really famous after that, but I didn't. So, but, we got like a surge of like a couple hundred subscribers after that. But no, it was just, it was really cool. It's still on my DVR, and that's definitely a memory I'll have for a while as kind of just like a staple of like, wow, I did that. Like I was in my local newspaper. They were like, man gets on Sunday Night Football. I was like, I'm that man. So that was cool.
I remember watching that game back in 2018, and that's when I probably first subscribed to you, and I was like, my goodness gracious, I watched this guy on YouTube. How the hell did he get here?
Yeah. You'd be amazed how much just pure luck is involved with everything.
No kidding. NBC executives, come to this channel next.
Exactly.
So obviously, the new CBA was just implemented into the NFL. And there's an expanded playoff field in 2020 with 7 teams, 3 of them being from the wild card. Do you think it's a bold take or unrealistic that the Bears, Vikings, and Packers could all qualify for the playoffs depending on how things pan out?
I don't think it's necessarily like a super hot take. I think that if there's any division that's going to have 3 people come or 3 teams come from it, I would think it's going to be the NFC West, just because like that's a pretty damn competitive division. The Rams, who knows what the Rams are doing, but like I think the Cardinals are going to be much better this year, and then you always have the Seahawks and the 49ers. But no, I don't think that's a completely and totally hot take. I think it's a decently realistic one. I mean, I have my opinions on the expanding to 7 teams, but I'm not a huge fan of it. But it gives us more playoff football, and I think it gives other teams opportunities to get hot, and kind of just like proves that old anecdote of it's any given Sunday. You could have a 7 seed come in and they can make it to the Super Bowl if they get hot at the right time.
It would be cool to see like a Cinderella story, something like March Madness.
100%, especially if it was the Packers, the 7 seed. I completely agree.
I don't know about that one, but you've gotten to speak with a couple of players like Jay Sternberger on your Packast. Since starting this journey, what has been your coolest interaction with a Packers fan or any NFL personality?
Interviewing Mark Murphy, the president of the Packers, twice was really cool. Mark is a really great guy, and I had some really cool experiences because of that. Jay Sternberger was awesome. The fact that like we text each other and I have a football player in my phone is pretty cool. Cause like at the end of the day, like obviously like I've been doing this for years. But like I'm a fan, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things that like I'm a normal dude who has like a setup in his basement, who is just like a fan. And like to have those opportunities is really, really cool. But I would say besides those, it's really just the interactions with like everyday fans. Like I've made some like really, really good friends, just through interviews and things like that. And like guys and gals that I like go back to every single year. And, even if they're not on the show, that I'm like talking to them and, we're talking football and things like that. And I think if anything has come out of this, for me, I think it's kind of like also changed my perspective on a lot of things when it comes to football, because, as a Packers fan, like, I know that the NFC North hates us. Like, bear none. Like, it's FTP all the way. And I was always like, oh my God, they're so jealous. Like, why do they hate us so much? And then, like, I would talk to, like, Lions fans, or I would talk to, like, a Browns fan who, like, haven't sniffed the playoffs in, like, decades. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, that's... And meanwhile, like, I'm sitting here, we have 2 back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and I'm like, wow, like, we are lucky as hell. And
we're jealous.
Like, I think it's just like, it's just you take it for granted sometimes. I think when I started this show, I definitely did. And like, fast forward years later, I'm like sitting here going like, wow, like we need to hold on to every single moment that we have like a good football team. And like we get pissed off when we don't make the playoffs, but teams haven't seen the playoffs in decades, like I said before. And I think it just kind of puts it into perspective of like what it means to be the fan. Because again, you have Browns fans who, they didn't win a game. Like they didn't win a game. And we're like upset. We're like, oh man, we lost 3 games in a row. Like they lost 16 in a row, and then it expanded into next season so badly that Bud Light gave them free beer. Like that's bad. And I think that like that just kind of, I don't know, like it makes it a lot of fun to watch and interact with people. And I thoroughly enjoy just flat out getting to know people and talking to people about football.
So before I go into my last question, you said how the NFL hates Packers fans. So a couple weeks ago, we talked to Brenton Mukamara and we talked to Pat Scales, who's our long snapper. They said in that locker room that the hate for the Packers is definitely real, which is kind of shocking to me because, it's another NFL team. There's players that are trying to do the same thing you're doing, just, trying to live out their childhood dream. And they actually hate another team. I just thought that was crazy. But you're a huge Packers fan. And if anybody who watches your videos, they can see your background and have you have a bunch of Packers memorabilia. What is your favorite Packers memorabilia that you own, and what is something that you want to add to your amazing collection?
Yeah. So I have 2 helmets that are on my desk that are supposedly signed by Bart Starr and Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they're fake. They might be, but when you buy them, you never know. But I actually, some of my hats I have from when I was like 8 years old. I hold on to those for a while. But honestly, the thing that, I just got out of the newspaper, like it was the New York Times, like the day after the Packers won the Super Bowl, like my wife framed it for me. Like that was really cool to have that. But something to add, I probably at one point definitely want like a signed jersey from like Rodgers and like to frame that, but I don't have the money to do that. So I'm not doing that right this second. But yeah, that's definitely what I want to be added to the collection someday. Also, I have more toasters than I could ever want.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Tom. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
If you want more content from Tom, you can head over to Twitter and Instagram and find him at Tom Grassi Comedy. You can also obviously check out his YouTube channel for some of the best football content on the platform. The link to that will be in the description. And you can also check out his website, tomgrassicomedy.com. If you want more content from us here at Bear Down, head to our website, beardown.com. You can also find the links to our social media fan pages down in the description. And you can find the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Bear Down. Surprised it didn't get heated in this one, but Parth and Jaylen, any last words, guys?
It was great to record with you, Tom. I mean, I had a great time. Actually, I have a lot of respect for Packers fans compared to Vikings fans. I feel like the Vikings fans are the most ruthless fans in the whole division. And I feel bad for Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit is just it's a pity case at this point. It's just like, you're just like, okay, guys, don't worry. One of these years you'll get it.
I'll actually cheer on them in the playoffs if they make it.
Exactly.
I want to thank Tom too. I've always been a big fan of yours. Even though you're a Packers fan, I'm not a big fan of any Packers fan at all. I don't really like you guys, especially recently. But yeah, thank you for coming onto the show. Make sure you guys are staying safe in this pandemic. Arizona's been stay-at-home thing has just opened up, so we can go outside. I'm still scared to go outside due to that, but other than that, make sure you guys are staying safe and bear down.
Absolutely. Bears and Packers fans alike, continue to stay safe. I think Illinois opens up here on June 1. Tom, I'm not real sure when New York opens up.
Yeah, we're never opening up. It's fine.
Yeah, for real. Queens and Cook County have been terrible, but continue to stay inside, flatten the curve, and do the best that we can. Bears and Packers fans alike. Thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, to the Bears fans listening, do us a favor and bear down. Peace.